Jed, what's this been like for you? If you can separate yourself as president of the team versus fan of the team, what's these last 3 weeks been like for you?
Yeah, I think you separate the decision-making part of it. It's been a really fun ride. Last couple of nights just being in the ballpark and, the energy it has, reminded me a lot of when we started getting good, in 2015, just a ton of energy, loud. People are into it. I feel like my ticket requests have gone up, 20-fold in the last month. And there's a real buzz about the team. It's a fun team to watch. It's a fun team to root for. So as a fan, it's been wonderful. As a decision maker, it was hard. I mean, we were, 7 games under, not very long ago. And that was hard because I didn't want to, make those trades, but I knew that it was probably the right thing to do if we didn't, get hot in a hurry. So I'm glad that they did because it would have been a shame not to let this group be able to finish the season together because they do like each other. They do believe in each other. And it's fun to see that kind of group come together.
Everybody felt the significance of the comeback win against the White Sox, and then what we will refer to here and after as the Talkman catch game, and everyone will know what we're talking about. It's just, it never ceases to amaze me that those of us that always try to be mindful of sample size and always try to understand the 162 with the deadline where it is and with the competition the way it is this year, sometimes individual outcomes really do matter more, as they seemed to in this case, did they not?
Yeah, the timing really mattered. If we didn't get hot that week against the White Sox and Cardinals, it would have been hard to look at a team with a sub 10% playoff odds and say we're not going to look towards the future and trade some of the guys we would have traded. And so it was really important that we got hot that week. I tried so hard that whole week not to look at individual games, and I tried to think about just let's get past the game on Sunday. Let's make a decision on direction after Sunday and not kind of go up and down and up and down. But I didn't expect us to win all of them, except for, I guess, the game on Sunday. So it made it pretty easy. As we got to Friday and Saturday, it was pretty clear the direction. I mean, the team sort of made that clear, which is awesome. And that game was a really nice exclamation point on that process.
You've mentioned before the concept of proximity to 500 and proximity to a division title. I'm curious, does proximity to the division weigh the same as proximity to a wild card? And if you guys would have been maybe further back in the division but closer to a wild card, do you think it plays out the same?
That's a great question. A lot of it depends in that situation on how many teams you're talking about in front of you. Being 5 back with 5 teams in front of you is a lot different than being 5 back with 1 team. And I think that's something that we were trying to weigh. But I realize a lot of times when you start looking at all the different variables and things like that, I realize that there's 5 or 6 different websites and services plus our own internal stuff that we used to look at the odds of winning the division, the odds of winning the wild card. And I feel like all those algorithms are a lot smarter than me. And so we really did look at that a lot as we were going forward and tried to make sure, okay, let's get to a place where these odds are fairly good. And, certainly where we were early that week with, sub 10%, that was not going to be good enough. But as we moved into the 30s and close to 40, that seemed like this is a good bet. And again, it's the bet we wanted to make on this team. So that made it a very easy decision.
I heard you a couple weeks ago talking on our afternoon show with Parkins and Spiegel about how bullish some of your internal numbers were. And I kept thinking about third order record that something prospectus keeps, which is a great way of thinking about it is probably like a turbocharged Pythagorean win-loss record. We're based largely on run differential, but run differential with quality of opponent factored in. Is that one of the things you look at?
Yeah. I mean, we looked at a lot. I think it's, like I said, we had 5 or 6 different things, and every single morning we updated them and looked at where we were. And that's a big part of it. The underlying numbers all year have been really good. And I think probably a lot of people were probably bored of hearing us talk about it. And, sometimes you can look at run differential and that can be somewhat misleading. But when you look at, like you said, quality of the opponent, I felt like we had beaten a lot of really good opponents during the course of the year in series. And also, trying to strip out some of the luck and some of the clutch stats and looking at just our opportunities to score and how we capitalized on them. It was very clear that we were a better team than our record. And, as we always say, at some point you are where you are, but when you play a lot of games, you hope that those things even out. And I feel like they're starting to even out. We're getting there. Obviously, games like the last couple of nights definitely pad the run differential in a way that sometimes can be misleading against position players. But, overall, we've had a really good run differential all year. The underlying numbers in that are really good. And so I'm glad, like I said, we won at the right time so we could keep this team together, because I do think that we had outperformed our record the whole year.
What was it that made you target Jeimer Candelario at the deadline?
So we felt like the single most impactful offensive contribution that we could add was, obviously Jeimer is a switch hitter, but a position player that could really hit right-hand pitching. We felt like there was definitely times during the year it felt like we hit lefties better than righties. I think that the emergence of Tauchman has limited that somewhat. Obviously, Bellinger has been good against both left and right, but that was something we really wanted. How can we lengthen out the lineup with someone that can hit right-hand pitching well? Obviously, he can move around to first and third and DH. And I really believe that with the rules now, you can't go into August and grab a guy off waivers if you have an injury. And so really having some offensive depth, I love the fact that we'll have to give guys more days off now when we have, really difficult decisions. I like the fact that Rossi has to make real hard choices now every single day on who to put in the lineup. And that's a great thing because, there's going to be injuries over the next 2 months. And I think sometimes we forget how long it is after the deadline to the end of the year. And in my job, it feels even longer now because we don't have the ability to grab guys in August.
When we talk to Jed Hoyer, we want to remind you to consider supporting Lurie Children's Hospital, which is important to him. It's ranked the #1 children's hospital in Illinois by U.S. News and World Report, and it was the first children's hospital in the country, the first hospital in Illinois to earn the American Nurses Credentialing Center's Magnet Award for Nursing Excellence. You mentioned that Rossi's going to have some decisions to make. They certainly will not be made without your input. And when you talk about seeing Candelario at first and third, what's the proper distribution of those starts, and how important is it to keep Nick Madrigal in the lineup at third?
It's really important. I think he's been outstanding defensively. When you look at his numbers, I think there was some skepticism on his ability to play third. It doesn't exactly look like your typical third baseman, but he's done an awesome job defensively. And I think he's really starting to hit like he has really his whole career up until, this injury that kind of set him back a bit. He's a really good player. I think we want to keep getting him in the lineup. And obviously if we can move guys around and sort of keep him at third, that'd be a wonderful thing. But, it's hot out right now. These are sort of the dog days that you always talk about. And so when we talk about distribution of playing time, I think being able to get guys a day off is really important. You don't want to, chase it so hard that you end up wearing guys out, and then you kind of fade down the stretch. And hopefully our depth offensively can allow us to, get guys off their feet for a day and therefore, have more energy for the real home stretch. So having some hard decisions and having some depth is a great thing.
What were some of the things that you guys saw when you made the trade for Madrigal and Hoyer that allowed you to think he's someone that can be developed? And what was the development plan for him when he went back down to the minors? And what did he do to convince you guys, hey, this is a guy that can help us not just get to the playoffs, but maybe win a playoff game?
Yeah, well, first of all, this guy was the 4th pick in the draft. He was a star in college. He always hit. You look at his numbers when he got up to the White Sox, and he was hitting. He hit his first year, I think, in 2020, and then in 2021 when he got hurt in June. But up until that point, he was hitting as well. And I think that injury really set him back, and I think it created some bad habits. He probably wasn't, loading into his legs as well, and sometimes he was kind of falling forward in his swing. And some of the impact of the ball was lessened, even though he's not a high exit velocity guy. His contact was even softer than before, and it felt like he just wasn't able to, keep outfielders honest, and you have to be able to keep them back enough to hit those singles in front of them. And he went back to Iowa, and it's a hard pill to swallow when you're a guy with his track record and his pedigree. But he went back, and to his credit, I've seen so many guys go back and sulk for a couple of weeks and then get to work, and he got to work on day one. And he and John Maley, who's the hitting coach in Iowa, did an awesome job. And I think he OPS like 1,400, and it was clear it was time to come back. And I think as much as he didn't want to go, obviously, but I think now he realizes that reset, sort of getting out of the pressure of the big leagues for a little bit and working on a swing and working on some of those bad habits, I think was really valuable. And he's been awesome ever since. And he had a little quick setback with his hamstring, but I think he's back and ready to go. And he can be a really important piece for us this year and for a while.
The effort to get Drew Smyly right necessitated the use of an opener for the first time, at least in my memory, in this organization in two starts. And then he struggled again last night. What's the plan now? Does he make his next start?
That's certainly the plan. I mean, the opener was a lot born of the Cardinals lineup. They obviously guys like Arenado and Goldsmith at the top of the lineup are tough to face. We weren't counting on Nootbaar homering to lead off in both games, but overall, I think the opener worked well and Drew threw great the second time we did that. I said this the other day. I do think with starting pitchers, their struggles are so magnified because they only go out there every fifth day. And, what they do often means, the win or the loss of the game. They go through slumps just like hitters. With hitters, we accept it a little bit more. And, this year already, we've seen Drew pitch incredibly well and then struggle. We've seen Jameson struggle and then pitch really well. Stroh was one of the best pitchers in baseball, and then he struggled for a bit. And so I do think guys kind of go up and down, and it's our job to get guys right, and hopefully we can get these guys all lined up, for this stretch run. But I think Drew will right the ship. Last year it was sort of mid-August or so, right around that Field of Dreams game when he really sort of kicked into gear, and he was probably our best pitcher the last 6 weeks last year. So hopefully he can do that again, and he'll be a big part of it.
Jed, with Stroh, when you're talking about a player that clearly knows his body as well, like listening to him talk about it, like he's very good at explaining the reasons why he's out of sync. What's the responsibility of the organization when it comes to a partnership with a player like that?
Well, I would say he's probably more aware of his body than any player I've been around, honestly. Like it's pretty incredible, what he's able to get out of at his size and stature. He's such a great athlete. He's so twitchy and he's so, so aware of everything. And so I think when he has a little thing like this, I think it can really throw him off. And so I think this is a good thing, honestly. I think giving him a chance to, get a cortisone shot, sort of get his hip feeling good, and then hopefully get his mechanics back to right. Because he was so good for us for, I guess what was it, the first, 3 months of the season. So many big games, and with our infield defense, getting his sinker right, where the guys are pounding the ball on the ground. I mean, it's such a great fit with him and our defense. So I think this is a good thing. With the off days we have over the next couple of weeks, we can reshuffle things and really, hopefully he'll miss one start. But I think this is a good thing. I mean, again, we have a lot of time left in the season, and the most important thing is getting him back to where he was, in April and May.
Jamison Tyone gets the start this evening. He's been really, really good and clearly has figured some things out. And how much has been undone from maybe some of the off-season tinkering that has him more comfortable and more back in the kind of form that you signed him for?
Yeah, I will say I was in Milwaukee around 4th of July, and I was watching our game in the weight room, and he was in there. We was talking during the game, and it was really good perspective because he was like, I had a pretty long stretch where I struggled with the Yankees, and I kicked things in, and he's like, it'll happen. I think he worked really hard. He worked hard to make changes when he was struggling, but to his credit, I think he had been through some struggles before, and he felt like, it's okay. I'm going to get through this. And you realize that's the value of having some guys that have had some ups and downs. If you have a guy that, dominates in college, dominates in the minors, and never has struggled, and all of a sudden he struggles, sometimes they really panic. And I think he had a really good perspective on it. And, his fastball shapes had gotten a little bit away from where they were with the Yankees. And that was the most important thing, was really working with our pitching guys and the trainers and the strength guys just to get his body in the right place and get those fastball shapes back to where they were. And, he's been beating guys in the zone the last 3 or 4 starts, and that's what he wasn't doing before. And hopefully he pitches well tonight.
I don't think that I've ever seen a player consistently make that slide throw from the 6 hole the way that Dansby Swanson does. I heard a story that while you had COVID, you watched every ground ball that he took in Atlanta. Is that true? And secondly, how big of a deal has it been for your defense that Dansby Swanson is your shortstop?
Yeah, it's embarrassing to admit that, but I was stuck in a hotel room and I had COVID, and I knew we had this huge decision on which shortstop to go after. And so, for all those guys, with our computer system, I watched every single ground ball that they all got. And it really did, kind of gravitate me towards Dansby. I mean, already he had such a great reputation as a leader. But he's played shortstop. I haven't been around a guy that when the ball's hit to him, you're out. He makes all the plays. It's a steadying confidence that's really incredible. And that was part of what drew me to him, was he makes every play, whether it's backhand side, glove side, coming in on. There's no play that is uncomfortable for him. He makes all of them, and it's remarkable. And I do think that his presence has been so incredibly steadying. And people mention the Tauchman game, and it isn't about Dansby, but the double play that we turned before the Tauchman catch was almost as impactful, in the sense of it was such a hard double play to turn. Nico had to be perfect. Dansby had to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And, when we built this team, that's what we were hoping for, is we have a Gold Glove second baseman, we have a Gold Glove shortstop. And I didn't realize at the time we were going to have a third baseman that was going to be playing at that level too. And when you watch us play now, it's really clean, and we turn ground balls into outs. And Dansby and Nico have been incredibly important that way. And I think as much as we've been scoring a ton of runs, I still feel like that's the backbone of the team, and they've been terrific.
I want to get back to something you said before about how the ballpark feels. And you mentioned the anecdotal evidence of your personal ticket requests going up. And I think all of these data points and the calls that we were taking before about how much fun people are having, I think people get the impression that when you go to work on the front office side and off of Gallagher Way there, that it's all very clinical and everybody blinking screens and you're looking at your phones and everybody's all McKinsey brained. But the fact is, you guys are baseball fans too. And now that some of these decisions are made and now that the commitment is made, how does it change the energy on your side of the organization just coming in the morning and just, everybody's grabbing their coffee and you're still going to your desk and having your meetings, but this is fun.
I mean, some of that you said is true. I mean, there's a lot of people sitting and staring at terminals when I look out the walls of my office, but I mean, everyone here does this because they love baseball, and this is whether they play professionally or play in college, or at some point they love baseball, and that's why they do this. And to me, one of the things that made me want to come to Chicago was I was in Boston, and we had incredible energy and interest, and I went to San Diego for a couple of years, and I missed that. It wasn't the same energy. We were in first place and drawing 20,000 a night in September. And you come to Chicago, and when you're good, when we turn things around at the end of 14 even, and then into 15, you can just feel the energy shift. And there's just no place like Wrigley. And I think that's the one thing that I love so much is, sitting there last night and the night before, this is my 12th season, something like that, with the Cubs. And I feel like that never, ever wanes. When this place is electric, there's nothing like it. It's the best ballpark in baseball by far. And it has such an incredible energy. And to me, it just motivates everyone so much that, if this is what it's like in early August, what can this be like, in October and late September when, everyone, the whole city is really into it. So that is the goal. I mean, the goal is to, the best thing about baseball is that you can captivate a whole city for August, September, and then if you make a late October run, there's nothing like that in sports, and I think that motivates everyone every day.
Jed, you had brought up that things are going to be difficult for Rossi when it comes to figuring out who he's going to play from night to night. What other changes do you think happen now for Rossi? Because you're not in a developmental curve necessarily. You are in a, hey, we're trying to win the division. So what changes for a manager in that scenario?
Well, I think it changes for a manager. It changes for the front office. I mean, we talk all the time about who to play and who not to play. And I think that when you start getting towards the end of the season where you're competing, it turns into just performance, and it ceases to be about development. And that has to happen. I mean, you have to have both, right? You have to be able to develop players in the big leagues, and you have to be able to let guys ride through slumps. But, the leash on that gets a lot shorter when you get into a situation like this. So, it becomes, playing the right guy and not being focused on development as much. And I think that's the right balance.